You're asking to die. This is like a Friday the 13th where the camp counselors insist on going off into the woods to have sex. Just stay together or buddy up. It's not that hard.
I'm really glad it didn't go that direction.
Remember when we first met John McClane? Argyle picked him up from the plane and took him down to Nakatomi Tower at the Christmas party. And the terrorists were overzealous, but it was sweet when they killed Ellis. And with a little help from Alan, John McClane kicked out.
Welcome back to Shat the Movies, the podcast where we answer the question, were the movies we love when growing up really that good? Have you ever caught yourself thinking, why don't they make movies like they used to? Can you still remember spending your Friday night searching for the perfect movie rental at Blockbuster Video? Do you even remember what Blockbuster Video was? If you answered yes, and this is the podcast for you, I'm one of your three hosts, Roger Roper, and alongside me are my two co-hosts, Big D, Dick Ebert.
Good evening.
And Gene Lyons.
I know you gentlemen have been through a lot, but when you find the time, I'd rather not spend the rest of this winter tied to this fucking couch.
And each week, we take a look back in time and decide if our favorite films still hold up. Each week, the audience selects from 4 movie choices that we then break out our VHS race car tape rewinder and watch the movie that tallied the highest number of votes. At the end of each podcast, the 3 of us will provide you, the audience, with the number of wipes each movie would need to take to get off your respective butts. So thank you so much for listening. If you haven't already, please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and follow us everywhere on social media. Big D, what was the theme of this week's movies?
Oh, we had a good one. It was John Carpenter movies. They Live, Escape from New York, and then we had a dead tie between Big Trouble in Little China and The Thing. And Gene and I were unanimous, and also because Gene had received the Blu-ray from Netflix. So we went with The Thing from 1982.
Wait a minute. So where was I in this voting situation?
Mexico. You're in Mexico.
Or Denver or Utah.
Listen, I'm okay with not doing Escape from New York because I was part of a podcast over there, Remake This Movie Right, with our friends Aaron and Troy. But They Live and Big Trouble in Little China. I think I would have thrown my weight behind Big Trouble in Little China, not The Thing.
Of course you would. You cannot resist a cartoonish, silly movie. Big Trouble is about all that thing. I could see you as a child in your Big Trouble in Little China pajamas running around. The Thing is so much more powerful psychologically. I mean, I love all 4 of these movies, but The Thing for me was fuck it. I had already watched it a week before, so I was being lazy.
You know, Raj would love Big Trouble with the racial stereotypes.
Oh yeah,
It makes it simpler to follow the narrative, guys.
Remember, they're not stereotypes if they're positive, right, Raj?
That's exactly right.
Let's also not fool ourselves. There are plenty of racial stereotypes in The Thing.
Yeah, absolutely. So we always ask the question, where were you or what are your memories of this movie? I will start off by saying I have never seen The Thing. This is the first time I actually saw this movie, and I thought it was a Stephen King adaptation. It is not. It's an original story.
Yeah, it's a remake of a 1950s movie, but the story does not follow the original plot. And I can remember first seeing this. I was probably like 9 years old when it came on HBO. I waited for my parents to go to sleep, turned on the little HBO, sat there in the dark, and scared the shit out of myself. I remember like physically covering my eyes with my hands, and it gave me nightmares for years. I'm going to bare my soul a little bit here and tell you one of my deepest, darkest fears growing up. There used to be a TV show in the mid-70s, which was called In Search Of with Leonard Nimoy. It was kind of like mythological stories and urban legends, and they did a show about Bigfoot in the Adirondacks in upstate New York, and they were telling stories of how Bigfoot would stand outside the windows of people's houses and reach through and grab children, and it was in the area I was living. It terrified me up until this day when I'm there. And you know, you're inside a house and the lights are on, but it's dark outside and you get that mirrored effect of the window. I felt that way watching this movie. I was expecting something to jump through the window, grab me. As a little boy, it scared the shit out of me. And watching this again, it didn't scare me so much, but it still had some moments of pure terror.
Well, I mean, dude, after watching this, you didn't have to worry about the window. You just had to worry about your parents. Like, you don't want to be alone with any of them. For me, my best friend Chet is a huge fan of The Thing, so he told me about it, insisted I watch it, and so a few years back we watched it, and I was totally blown away. Could not believe I hadn't seen it before. But then I thought about it. I was 2 years old, and my parent certainly would not have let me watch this as a 2-year-old. So, but man, I still even appreciate it as an adult.
Well, if you've never watched the movie, here's how the format for the show will go. We are going to break down the entire plot. It's better because we are going to get into spoilers if you go and you watch the movie. So press pause on the podcast if you haven't, then turn it back on. But we will go in a plot-by-plot format as broken down by people who write this stuff on Wikipedia. We're going to talk about the movie and then give our Shat, and then break out our Shat meter and give you the rating at the end. So with that being said, let's go ahead and start. The Thing, as we mentioned, is a 1982 horror mystery sci-fi. It involves a U.S. research station in Antarctica comes across an alien force that can become anything it touches with 100% accuracy. The members must now find out who's human and who's not before it's too late. It was directed by John Carpenter and stars Kurt Russell, Wilford Brimley, and Keith David. The Thing opened up number 8 at the box office with an opening weekend gross of $3.1 million and went on to make just under $20 million domestically. And Carpenter and other writers have speculated that the film's poor performance was due to the release of E.T., the extraterrestrial, 2 weeks earlier, with its more optimistic scenario of alien visitation. The Thing also opened on the same day as Ridley Scott's science fiction film Blade Runner, which debuted at number 2. So in the lexicon of sci-fi movies in the early 80s, especially in 1982, this was like the third choice. This was like the girl who, doesn't get picked by the handsome boy at the prom to go dancing. But had that handsome boy just looked past that girl's glasses, probably would have seen this movie. It's pretty fucking good.
I mean, think about this summer of 82. If you're a sci-fi fan, you got Blade Runner, E.T., and The Thing opening in the same summer. That's insane.
And thank God for VCR and rental copies of this movie. Otherwise, this would have been dead in the bin and forgotten, and we wouldn't revere it today as a classic. It clearly is.
This movie looks and feels like it could have been released within the last couple of years.
I think it holds up even against the 2011 version.
Oh, yeah.
Which looks, to me, worse because they relied so much on CG. The aliens are less terrifying in that they are in this, and you can clearly see they're puppets and animatronics, but it just looks and feels more real and genuine.
I was not a huge fan of Escape from New York. I thought it was a little over the top. So I think this movie is one of John Carpenter's best movies of all time, guys. This movie is fucking brilliant.
I just can't get over the fact that you said the Escape from New York was a little over the top.
It's a little over the top.
You mean when the president crashes into New York, which is a prison, and they got to get out of there, and the guy's name is Snake Plissken?
You got to remember, this is the same guy who said that Raising Arizona was highbrow New York humor.
It is.
Your credibility's out the window. You better go to that trailer.
All right, play the trailer, Big D.
12 men have just discovered something. For 100,000 years, it was buried in the snow and ice. Now it has found a place to live. Inside. Where no one can see it, or hear it, or feel it.
I know I'm human. Some of you are still human. This thing doesn't want to show itself. It wants to hide inside an imitation. It'll fight if it has to, but it's vulnerable out in the open. If it takes us over, then it has no more enemies. Nobody left to kill it. And then it's won.
You guys gonna listen to Garry? He can beat one of those things!
All right, in Antarctica, a Norwegian helicopter pursues an Alaskan Malamute to an American research station. Upon landing, a Norwegian accidentally drops a thermite charge, destroying the helicopter. The surviving Norwegian pursues the dog, firing a rifle until he is shot dead by Garry, the station commander. The Americans send a helicopter pilot, R.J. McReady, and Dr. Copper to the Norwegian camp for answers, but they only find a charred ruin containing corpses. Outside, they discover the burned remains of a humanoid corpse with two faces, which they bring back along with some videotapes. Their biologist, Blair, performs an autopsy on the corpse, finding a normal set of human internal organs.
So when I first started watching this movie, I had my doubts from the get-go. They show this UFO going by Earth, and I'm like, what the hell? All right, like I guess they're just gonna give it away right now. I thought that was immediately. I was like, this is a part of the movie that was a huge mistake, right? Why are you showing us the UFO? You gave the whole thing away. If that wasn't there and we discovered this slowly, if we basically we just start off with the helicopter, now you're like, what's going on? Why are they shooting at a dog from a helicopter? This is crazy, right? Like what's the story here? What's happening? And that was just one issue that I had with it. And then again, those establishing shots at the beginning, I kind of gave me doubts. It looked really cheap with these aerial shots, very shaky camera work. I was kind of glad I didn't see it on a big screen. I thought I'd probably just get motion sickness. Just don't understand that. But then they caught me. They hooked me in with all this. The mystery was there within a couple minutes.
Yeah, I thought I'd gotten a cam version of the movie when that first shaky cam starts off. I couldn't tell if there was something wrong with my version of it. But that Spaceship, I totally, after you mentioned that, agree. You take out the mystery, you take out some of the suspense, you've given us the answer. I sat down and watched the making of video. That Spaceship was created and took about 6 months and was handcrafted. It was beautiful with 400 independent lights. Gorgeous, and it's on screen for an eighth of a second. You can't even really tell any of the detail. But as we look at this, we have to remember this was the Stone Age when it comes to special effects. There was no computer-generated images. Post-production was almost non-existent. To create that opening title, they created a negative of the actual word, the thing. They put it inside of a fish tank that they filled with smoke. Then they stuck a light behind the fish tank and had a garbage bag on the back that stopped the light from coming through and set it on fire with a match. So it slowly burned through the plastic bag, revealing the letters. So when we see these aliens, we should bow down in awe of what they were able to create.
What you're talking about is the special effects, computer generated. It was non-existent. So a lot of this stuff was all done, like you said, practical effects, and people had to get creative, as pointed out in the documentary. But again, I got to agree with Gene here. It would have been more effective had they just started off with the helicopter chasing a dog, because I, as a viewer of any movie, anytime a dog is involved, regardless if it's Cujo or an evil dog, I just hate seeing dogs get shot at.
Okay, I know Gene is a dog lover, and both of you have dogs. I think in the opening half of the movie, this dog is the standout performer. One of the best canine performances that we've ever seen.
Oh yeah, he was outstanding. Now they probably used multiple dogs, I'm guessing, to keep them on a shooting schedule like that. But yeah, I was glad to see the dog. The dog had a lot of charisma, and is a beautiful, beautiful example of Malamute as well.
And I think he emoted an intelligence. I was scared. The dog had some knowledge of what was going on. He wasn't just running around looking for a treat.
What's interesting about that Malamute, actually, is that a few years later, he was not on camera, but he actually taught he was the acting coach for Willow.
That's right. I feel like it would have been better had there had been like a little child running away. I am okay with a man in a helicopter with a sniper rifle shooting at kids running through the snow than I am with Alaskan sled dogs. That's just how I feel. I'd rather shoot a kid who's really an alien. I'm not advocating shooting of children, guys, but I am advocating shooting of children if those are indeed alien shapeshifters running through the snow versus taking on a dog form.
So my only problem really with this movie that's going to be a common thread that goes throughout is the lack of common sense. I hate when smart people do dumb things and no one questions it. Starts off, why is a helicopter which can hover doing strafing runs at a dog? Just go over the dog, hover, and slowly follow it as you drop the charges or shoot it. Would be simple, but instead they're trying to make it these dramatic, long strafing runs. And then we've got an American research station here, so we can assume that this team has some kind of scientific background. Why do they risk taking possible contaminants into their camp, exposing themselves to danger? Wouldn't they know immediately that there's some kind of pathogen that could be dangerous?
The only thing I can think of is that, there are very different types of scientists, and it seems like if they've got this Antarctic outpost, that they're, in fact, more, I don't know if they're climate scientists or they're more like doing some sort of climate archaeology. Like it might be the sort of thing that they're not prepared to work with a biological contaminant. Although their instrumentation, the fact that they have the doctor doing the autopsy, and the fact that they've got software that's specific to biology would tend to indicate otherwise. I would just say that they're not necessarily from the CDC.
I would also have to disagree with you in that this is the first aliens kind of movie where I think common sense actually prevails. Very early on, there are characters in this movie that are like, hey, we know what's going on here and we gotta fucking get away from this. Like this, like there's no dumb people making dumb decisions, which is a very easy trope to happen in horror movies. I was pleasantly surprised that the characters found out what was the cause of it very early on, and then most of the movie is from there on out trying to decide who is infected and who isn't.
Yeah, to Big D's point, though, we just talked that 2 weeks before this movie came out, E.T. came out. If you look at the way they treat an extraterrestrial in E.T., they've got, the hazmat suits, they got the clean room and all that stuff. So it's not like the technology wasn't there. It's not like it wasn't something that people would think about.
Hell yeah, they cover the entire house. There's a chance that E.T. could infect the neighborhood. You have them dig up a corpse of some hybrid human animal. It's steaming and smoking and oozing. They all stand around it for the autopsy. No surgical masks. They're wearing these tiny little rubber gloves. You could easily be hit by goo. No one sees the danger. I see the danger.
So are you just going to, all right, so say that you're in a Alaskan outpost, you're a biology professor, or you're out there studying the biological elements of the Antarctic, and you come across this hybrid human creature. Are you telling me that you, as a biological leader, you wouldn't see Nobel Prize in front of you and want to bring that back and do an autopsy on that?
I think what Big D's saying, though, is that you see a guy run up, obviously crazed, shooting at you. You fly to where he came from. Everybody's dead. The whole place is burned down. And the only evidence you have is something biological that you cannot recognize steaming in the Antarctic. You might go, something's not quite right here. You know what I would do? I would fly back to fucking base, call it in, and have somebody else come look at it.
Yeah, the only member of the Norwegian team that they find had strapped himself in a chair and slit his throat and his wrists. To me, that screams danger, danger, danger.
Yeah, but listen, the flaming dead corpse that they brought back didn't cause the alien outbreak. It was the shape-shifting dog.
It doesn't matter. It's a stupid move.
You know what? It's a stupid move. Pouring JB Scotch into your computer because you're mad at it that it beat you in chess. That's the only thing that because how are they going to get a new computer down to the Antarctic?
That was just a gaming computer, so it didn't really matter, but it really doesn't matter because Kurt Russell looks cool as fuck. So I'd always known Kurt Russell was a good looking dude, but when we look back at these movies, there's some guys like Harrison Ford, like Kurt Russell, where you're like, damn, there is nobody today who looks as good as these dude looked. He dressed like, I looked at him, I go, how do I describe this? This is what an Antarctic research rebel would dress like, right? It's kind of got this degree of cool, but still sort of practical. None of his clothing really seemed climate appropriate. It was just like a leather jacket. He's like, I'm in the Antarctic, I don't give a fuck. But the only thing I was unsure of is that hat inside a helicopter just seemed like a really bad idea.
Was that a prospector's hat?
That's what it looked like. And I was like, isn't it bothering him as far as his peripheral vision? When the helicopter rotors are going, doesn't it just kind of fly off? What is it protecting him from in the Antarctic? I mean, I know it's really sunny out there. You don't have a lot of cover, but it just seemed like nobody else was wearing one.
I halfway expected Kurt Russell to throw on an eye patch halfway through the movie and become Snake Plissken.
Well, that would have been over the top, Raj.
Well, what's over the top is this is basically the same plot as Aliens versus Predator, right?
No, that's two alien species. One is a bounty hunter or a hunting for sport. This is humans.
No.
One is trapped in ice for a couple 100,000 years.
No Have you
comparison.
seen Aliens versus Predator?
Yes.
All right, so how did the movie start out with, guys?
How did it start
out?
They're in the Antarctic.
And they discover what?
They discover this tunnel thingy.
Uh-huh. And a ship.
And they go in there.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And they go down, and what do they discover in the ship? In the Antarctic?
Aliens and predators.
Aliens. But then the predators land, the ship lands, and then they go and they hunt the aliens.
Listen, if any Hollywood studios are listening right now, we've got a great idea. Shadow Entertainment will sell you the rights to Alien versus Predator versus The Thing, which would be kind of awesome.
Well, Clark kennels the Malamute with the station's sled dogs. It soon metamorphoses and attacks them. When he hears the commotion, Mac pulls the alarm and Childs incinerates the creature. Blair performs another autopsy, which leads him to believe the creature perfectly imitates other organisms. The Norwegians' records lead the Americans to a buried flying saucer that the station's geologist Norris hypothesizes is likely over 100,000 years old. Blair becomes increasingly paranoid and withdraws, calculating that if the alien escapes to a civilized area, all life on Earth will be assimilated within a few years. Fuchs tells McReady that he is worried about Blair, and according to Blair's journal, the creature's dead remains are still active on a cellular level. The camp enacts safety measures designed to reduce risk of assimilation.
You know, before things go shitty, we get a lot of time where we're watching these guys kill time, and all the ways that they kill time are really important to the mood of the movie. You understand the mental state they're in. As things go haywire, you can feel that tension just from you're playing computer chess, you're drinking, you're playing pool. It's a lot of guys in a very confined space, and you can tell that there's already a tension between personalities, and so all it takes is just a spark to set things off.
Yeah, they're starting to get cabin fever, even though it's early in the winter. But I didn't remember watching this as a kid how quickly shit goes bad. I thought they were going to take a lot of time to get to just the alien attacking and people starting to die. I felt like it was right out the chute. This movie didn't waste any time, and I really respect that.
Speaking of not wasting time, though, Raj kind of mentioned this before, that I was really relieved to see a character as smart as Blair. This is something that's missing from a lot of movies, where shit goes wrong and it takes them 75% of the movie for them to go, oh, this is what it is. Blair recognizes shit really quickly. It's like autopsy, this thing morphs, this is what I'm seeing here. You can see these organs and it's starting to mimic things. This is what we're dealing with. And what's great about that is it sets up the rest of the movie where we go, okay, we understand the rules now. We understand how this thing operates, and that makes it really interesting. And it gives us a couple of key facts that you don't want to be alone with it, and that basically it can look like anything and mimic anything, and that makes the movie as scary as it is.
Wouldn't you have liked that to be explained a little bit better? Now, I hate when movies have over-exposition. We've talked about this before on multiple podcasts, when they break out the entire plot like in a scene, and that's the only reason for that scene. I love it when a movie does a very effective job of telling a story without having exposition or words. I felt like the fact that they overutilize really bad computer CGI to tell the audience that if the contagion is spread, it will ... infect humanity by 6 months. Like, why couldn't he have been like looking at a petri dish and then seen it versus really bad 1982 graphics?
Because that was high tech at the time. And I got to go completely against what you're saying. It was subtle the way they did it, and I thought it was elegant. He's working it out in his head. Instead of him just blurting it out, hey, everybody, I believe that this is morphing. I think we're in danger. He has the kernel of that thought, and he slowly works on it. He's jotting down in his notebook. I didn't need a scientific laboratory montage. This isn't Breaking Bad. We're not cooking meth.
It was a little curious, though, that they basically had software that was specifically designed to track cellular changes and then also calculate the chances of a pandemic. Seemed a little suspicious to me.
Yeah, the other thing that seems a little suspicious to me is the cook. I think we've talked about this before. 1980s roles for black men in films, very limited at certain times.
Oh, yeah. I mean, okay, you're going to probably wear a beret. You're going to be the flashy, stylish one. You got to listen to some soul music or some hip hop. And of course, roller skates have got to be involved.
And you have to not be willing to turn down your music for anything.
Yeah. Well, the other things that are happening, have you guys ever known anyone that's ever worked in the Antarctic? No?
No.
All right. So I had a friend who worked in the Antarctic. She was a firefighter. So this is what she told me. Camps are a lot like that, where people go stir crazy. They work in it's like big oil rig people that they work months on ship and then they come back. It's a lot like that in the Antarctic. Well, the first question I asked was, it's fucking snow. How dangerous is there for risk of fire? She's like, it's extremely dry there. So it has a very arid climate. So they're extremely afraid because resources are so minimal of fire. Because if any fire catches, the hopes of protecting any of your lab work or anything like that is slim to none. Like, that fire is going to completely envelop the entire base and go up. Knowing that, And then watching this movie and how judicious they use, like how liberal they are with their use of flamethrowers and all of that, had me questioning the common sense of these workers.
Yeah, I mean, that actually even begs the question, why the hell do they have a flamethrower?
Yeah, it makes no sense.
The only thing I think of is they don't have a way to dispose of garbage, so they just burn it. I don't know.
And why all the guns? Why do they have a entire arsenal?
Buddy, because they're only a couple miles away from Norwegians.
That's right. We know Norwegians are very, they're highly invasive peoples. They're constantly warring with other nations.
Yeah, they're going to reach into your window at night and steal your Big D.
Yeah. You talk about the dog scene as well here. Again, great acting by the dog and all the dog actors. But also, I really wanted that dog that was gnawing at the fence to get out. I was like really pulling for that dog.
Was that a dog puppet? How the fuck did they get the dog to do that?
Oh, you just putting some delicious on the fence.
No, he was chewing at the wire. There's no way that the ASPCA would allow them to have a dog, an actual dog, chewing on metal. No way.
Well, it's not really metal.
What do you think it was? Like a fence made out of beef jerky?
Yeah.
That wasn't Slim Jim.
No, I'm pretty sure that was.
Practical.
That had to be a puppet.
Listen, if you put 400 individual lights on a UFO, you can make a fence out of beef jerky.
Mm-hmm. Well, the creature assimilates Bennings, but Windows chases him outside before his metamorphosis is complete, and McReady burns the creature before it can escape. They discover Blair has wrecked all the transports and killed the remaining sled dogs. The team subdue Blair as he is destroying the radio and lock him in an isolated tool shed. Copper recommends a blood serum test to determine who is assimilated, but the paranoid men turn on each other when they find the blood stores have been sabotaged.
So, in this point in the movie, we start to understand how complicated the biology is of these aliens, and it takes a real imagination to do that. So, other terrifying aliens in film, like aliens and xenomorphs, they're fairly easy to understand. They have a simple biology, simple, life pattern and maturity. I like that this life form has tricks up its sleeve, complicated workings. The idea that each part of it is an individual sentience that wants to stay alive, and that makes it far more volatile, or just the idea that it mimics things, but it can't do it immediately, that it needs a little bit of time. It makes it a lot scarier in that you can't quite understand it completely. And even at the end of the movie, I'm not sure we know all the rules.
No, but every form it takes is terrifying, from a head spider to any form it takes. Also has to let out some death, blood-curdling scream or a howl that just would probably cause 5 or 6 people to die of cardiac arrest. But we have another perfect example of some more smart people doing dumb things. They're smart enough to realize that even on a molecular level, this is dangerous, so that they shouldn't be preparing meals for each other. They should only eat out of cans. So then why the fuck do they insist on continuing to split up constantly?
Yeah, it literally, the only issue you have to worry about is somebody being changed. And a pretty surefire way to make sure that doesn't happen is to be around each other all the time. Now, you're in a fairly confined space already. You all know each other. And so, almost immediately you see things like Kurt Russell in a darkened room by himself, drinking and thinking, or you've got Blair off on his own. And throughout the movie, they keep splitting up, which seems like the absolute worst thing you could do.
Well, I don't understand the rules here of how people get infected and how they turn into this alien. Like what it takes.
It seems like it's a blood pathogen. Like you need to actually get some of their biological fluid in your mouth is what it seems like, or in a wound. They can't just touch.
So it's like zombies.
I don't know if it's like zombies, but I don't know how it's passed. And that's even more reason. Mac has a conversation. Hey, we should keep an eye on each other. Let's not split up. They immediately split up. Mac goes to record his tapes about what's going on. Another guy sits in his room moping. Somebody else is doing research. You're asking to die. This is like a Friday the 13th where the camp counselors insist on going off into the woods to have sex. Just stay together or buddy up. It's not that hard.
I'm really glad it didn't go that direction.
Well, McReady takes charge and orders folks. And can I just say, before I continue on with this plot, that the hardest thing about this movie is fucking understanding which one of the characters was which. Like, I have no idea who these characters were. I know who McReady is, because that's Kurt Russell. I know who Blair is, because that's the Doctor. The rest of these guys, no fucking idea. And I just watched the movie 3 hours ago.
Well, that's why I have a cheat sheet pulled up. Let's test Gene. Gene, who is Garry?
Garry is the guy with the gun at the beginning that shoots the Norwegian through the eyeball.
God damn it, you're good. Norris.
Norris, he was in Missing in Action. He's got a beard. He's also starred in Walker, Texas Ranger.
No, he was the chubby guy who got his head fall off. What about Windows? Last one.
Windows was the radio operator.
Okay, see, he passes.
Yeah.
It looks like it's just you,
Yeah,
Raj.
I had no idea who these people were. So anyway, Mac takes charge and orders Fuchs to continue Blair's work, but Fuchs disappears. McReady, Windows, and Knowles finds his burnt corpse outside. Windows returns to warn the others while McReady and Knowles investigate further. On the way back, Knowles cuts Mac loose from the tow line, assuming he has already been assimilated, when he finds a torn shirt with Mac's name on it. As the team debates Mac's fate, he breaks in and threatens to destroy the station with a bundle of dynamite if they attack him. Norris appears to suffer a heart attack after he and Knowles unsuccessfully attack Mac from behind.
Okay, so I thought halfway through this movie, it's got to be Mac. Like, he's got to be patient zero, right? And I thought that was supposed to be the big reveal, right? And here's a couple things. So they tell us that you'll find a torn clothing is a pretty good indicator that that person's been assimilated. They find Mac's uniform and it's torn. Fuchs, he's like, mysteriously burnt up. Mac's implicated in that. He's threatening to blow himself up. He's the most hostile guy in the whole scene. I thought, oh, fuck, that's the big reveal. And I guess not.
Well, you didn't know that the Thing is a master of misdirection and sabotage?
No, I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah, he's planting evidence. He's not busy enough killing people or hiding. He has to fabricate evidence.
I mean, that's the other question, that's always interesting is it's like, oh, okay, so it's assimilating people. Does it also understand their backgrounds or learn their language? Like, wouldn't it be really easy to be like, okay, yeah, so the way I'm going to tell if you are the Thing is, what did we all have for dinner last night? Does it absorb their memories?
Yes, it obviously does.
What I don't understand if this is an alien creature, correct?
Yeah, an alien life form.
This is an alien
It
life
came in
form.
a spaceship.
It came.
Yes.
Do we assume that this is the alien that flew that spaceship?
Maybe it's the thing that killed the alien that was flying that spaceship, and that's why it crashed.
Okay, all right. See, that would make more sense to me because this is my problem with some of these movies, these sci-fi movies. How do highly evolved societal, creatures that have discovered long-term or long flight distances in space and all that stuff are the same mindless creatures that go around killing people and assimilating them? That doesn't make any sense. Unless they're the Borg. Unless they're the Borg, then they can assimilate.
Big D, cover your ears, because we could just refer to the U.S. Army.
What?
What?
He was covering his ears. Okay, basically, it's like asking, like, how can we, as a species that has mastered nuclear power, interstellar or not interstellar, but at least extraterrestrial travel. We've sent probes out into space. We can, we can transfer data at this almost, effectively at the speed of light. How is it that we still walk around killing things at random? Our primary food source as Americans is other animals. Like that's a pretty easy question to answer.
I like Gene's explanation better, where the reason that the ship crashed was it had an outbreak of the Thing on board.
Yeah.
It would make complete sense.
Yeah, so basically it's the plot of Aliens versus Predator.
No. So if you talk about anybody about the Thing, the scary part is how people turn on each other when they don't know who the enemy is. It's human paranoia and our reaction to it, and how the drive for self-preservation can backfire. Psychological horror is really the most fun kind, and if you think about movies today, especially horror movies today, they very much fall into that realm of really The Ring and other movies like that. But every now and again, you get a movie like Get Out or other ones that are more about what's going on in your head. And I find those to be the most enjoyable.
Yeah, that's why I thought this was a Stephen King, because if I could compare this to another movie, was The Mist, right? That psychological, when people start turning on each other, when they're trapped in a very tight space, what does the human condition do? And that's why when I learned that it was not a Stephen King film, and in fact, as Big D pointed out, a remake of a 1950s, I was pleasantly surprised. And I think when you focus on psychological fear, that makes a film that much better, especially if they're going for horrors and thrills. All right. When Copper attempts to revive him, Norris transforms and kills Copper by biting his arms off. McReady incinerates the creature and orders Windows to tie up everyone for a new test. Clark attacks McReady but is killed. McReady explains his theory that every piece of the alien is an individual organism with its own survival instinct. One by one, McReady tests everyone's blood with a heated piece of copper wire. Everyone is still human except for Palmer, whose blood flees from the hot wire. Exposed, Palmer transforms and infects Windows, forcing McReady to burn them both.
So we've realized now at this point that blood, you want to stay away from it with the aliens. It's highly contagious. They decide to use the same scalpel to draw blood from everyone in the room. Hypothetically, if your first person you test was infected, by the time you draw all the samples, wouldn't everybody else be infected?
Beyond that, why on earth are they cutting across their thumbs for the blood test? I'm cringing every time. I'm like, why would you do that? A thumb is a very sensitive and useful thing to have. Wouldn't you cut like maybe, I don't know, the side of your pinky or use like some sort of a lancet? It just seemed like really, really painful and a bit sadistic.
This entire scene, people are making terrible decisions. Listen, if we are in the Antarctic, where people are dying all around us because there's an alien shapeshifter, and one of us goes down, I'm not going to try and revive you. I'm not going to throw paddles on your chest. I'm not going to give you CPR. I'm going to fucking burn you alive right then and there. You're dead to me, man.
Yeah, I found myself questioning what would I have done differently. It didn't seem wise to sedate 3 members of the team, then tie the rest, together in a group, then start doing it one-offs. You didn't know who was an alien or who was infected and who wasn't. I found myself starting to think, okay, what do I do? First, I test Nollis, and he comes back clean, so he's my man. We then tie up the other 6 people separated in the room. We then go one by one and test them and then untie them. That would have limited the chance of what happens. You've got 3 of them tied together. As soon as one turns, as soon as we find out that Palmer is infected, he's got 2 victims right next to him. Stupid. Could you guys come up with a better way to run that test?
Yeah, I didn't really truly understand why they tied them together. That doesn't make any sense to me. Like, wouldn't you isolate them room by room?
No, I want them all in my view. I'm tying them in different corners of the same room. Everybody has to stay within eyesight of each other.
I mean, look, let's you can look at it that way as far as the lack of logic in the real world. You can look at it the other way, which is this created a really great tension. This was the moment where you're sitting at the edge of your seat and you're watching. I mean, I felt my heart's thumping. I'm like, okay, like, who is it? Who is it? And I wanted to know if my suspicions were right? Like everybody's got their own bets on who it is and who it isn't. And I thought that was a really cool scene. I don't think you could have achieved it in other ways, although maybe if you put them in separate corners of the room, that would still do the same thing. But it was nice to have everybody in one shot.
So for me, the most terrifying part of the aliens is that screech and those tentacles that come out and start thrashing around the room trying to grab things. For you, what part of these aliens terrified you the most?
I mean, to me, it was the idea that any part of it, that you really had to get all of it. And that's, any part of it could transform into something else. You didn't really understand the biology of it. And that made it, again, like I said, it's a different species of anything that we've seen before in film. And so it was kind of exciting to watch and also made it, simultaneously terrifying.
The scariest part to me is when the dog metamorphoses and then starts spraying the other poor dogs. Like, I was like, oh, man, like, do they really we're going a little gratuitous here with the hurting of dogs. Now, again, if this was a cage full of small children and the alien was spraying his junk all over the kids and their faces and their little bratty noses, I'd be okay with it. While leaving Childs on guard, the others head out to test Blair, only to find that he has tunneled out of the tool shed. They realize that Blair is assimilated and has been scavenging equipment to build a small escape craft. Discovering that Childs is missing and the station's power generator is destroyed, McReady speculates that the thing now intends to hibernate until a rescue team arrives. McReady, Garry, and Knowles decide to dynamite the complex, hoping to destroy the thing. As they set the explosives, Blair kills Garry and Knowles disappears. Blair transforms into a much larger monster and attacks, destroying the detonator, but McReady still triggers the blast with a stick of dynamite, destroying the base. McReady sits nearby as the camp burns and Childs reappears, claiming he was lost in the storm pursuing Blair. Exhausted and with no hope of survival, they acknowledge the futility of their distrust and share a bottle of scotch. End movie.
All right, Raj, so you mentioned that they decided to blow up the base in order to hoping to get the thing. That part of it was the weirdest plot device of all, because you're sitting there going, okay, you know it can hide in the ice until it's found again. You don't even know that you've got all of it. I mean, parts of it could be all over the place. I don't understand how blowing up the base solves anything. It would just move away from the fire. But beyond that, they leave Childs alone, ostensibly, to guard something. If you plan on blowing everything the fuck up, why are you leaving him to guard anything? Why would you leave this man alone one last time? It's tactically a stupid move. Stop leaving people alone.
Well, my other problem with this is the use of dynamite. Again, judicious use of probably improper handling as well. Big D, you were in the Army. You handled explosives. Aren't sticks of dynamite like the most unstable things?
No, dynamite's pretty stable. C4 is probably the most stable of all. And even if he lit the fuse, there was enough time for it to burn down that you could have stopped him. But if you want to see why you should not be throwing dynamite at an alien force that only a couple cells could convert you and get you assimilated, there's a video of like a humpback whale that gets beached, I think somewhere in California, and the town decides...
It was Washington.
Okay, Washington. The town decides the way they're going to do it is they're going to pack it with dynamite and blow it up into small pieces and then let the wildlife come and eat it. It does not happen like you'd imagine. There's giant chunks of meat raining down. Blowing up these aliens would do that same thing. So instead of trying to contain one or two infected persons, you now have hundreds and thousands of small pieces that are potentially hazardous. Not a smart move.
You know, another thing that might have really helped out is instead of using dynamite, just maybe use walkie-talkies. So much like a cell phone could have really helped with Die Hard, this entire crew would have been fine if they just used walkie-talkies. Talk to each other. Like, I understand that the long wave, the long range ham radio's out, but like you could easily just be like, hey, everybody okay? Check in every now and then, or whatever. Keep in touch if you do have to split up.
Okay, so wait a minute. So I want to make absolutely sure. Blair was an alien the entire time. Like when they locked him into the shed, he was already an alien.
No, at some point, Blair is infected and then turns into Tony Stark and decides to burrow underneath that little hut to create his Iron Man suit.
But how did he get infected?
Obviously, somebody went out there. It could have happened when Knowles and McGrady went out there for the first time. You had tons of people walking around that it could have been any of them at any point. But I don't believe in the beginning, because Blair is clearly destroying the helicopter and all of the equipment to contain the danger, to not allow that the thing can escape into a populated area. So it would make complete sense. He was trying to safeguard humanity, and at some point later, he was infected.
The other thing I didn't necessarily enjoy was when it's like the Kevin Bacon movie, Tremors, when he's burrowing through the snow and attacking Kurt Russell's McReady. I was like, this is not that exciting to me. I'm not that scared about this.
No, there's two scenes that scared me. Was the jump scare where you turn around and Dr. Blair was standing behind him, or that large thing going underneath the floorboards that actually got a jump out of me even today. So I liked it. But I want to jump right to the ending because there's a little bit of a controversy with this. We come to the end. The entire camp is blown up. The only two left alive is McGrady and we have Childs. It is implied that they are both human, but I don't think that's the case. I got to believe that Childs is the thing. That in all that time he was left alone and he was unaccounted for, that he had become infected. So I have a few pieces of evidence, so I'm not just making this up. If you notice they're having a conversation, Kurt Russell, you can see his breath, the condensation in the cold. It's clear. It looks like a steam engine, like a locomotive. When Childs speaks, there's almost no visible emission from his mouth. It's as if he's a completely different species. But I have one last piece of evidence, I think, but I want to hear what you guys say first. If you think both aliens, both humans, what do you think?
Yeah, so I immediately, of course, had to read up on this because I thought, my mind obviously went to the alien survives it. Childs is gone for way too long. They wouldn't have him gone for any other reason. You would have seen him die otherwise. And so there's definitely a question that has to be in our minds of what happened there. And again, I noticed the same things you noticed, and when I read up on them, I was pretty convinced it was Child's. But I don't think that we get a clear answer, which again, I love when movies do this, just like Inception and other films where they kind of leave it open-ended for you to determine what happened. My mind immediately went to, yeah, Child's is the thing.
So they went through the hassle of actually shooting a happy ending because they didn't know how it was going to be received, where we see McGrady surviving. He's back in civilization doing a blood test, so we know he's not infected. But I think Child's has to have been. For me, the nail in the coffin and the fact that closes the case is that drink that he hands them. They've been making Molotov cocktails and throwing them around the entire base, trying to burn the alien out. So McGrady takes out the drink, he opens it, and he has a reaction to the smell of it that I didn't notice the first time. He's reacting like, oh, this wasn't alcohol, this is kerosene, this is one of the Molotov cocktails. Child sits down, he's not quite sure whether Child is human, he hands him the drink. Child's thinking, hey, I have to do what humans do, drinks it down. McGrady lets out a chuckle and laughs. He's acknowledging at that point that he realized he'd been taken and there's nothing he could do and that the aliens are going to survive. But I could be wrong, but that's my closing argument.
No, I think it's a good observation. You know, we talked about the idea of whether or not these were the aliens that caused the probably more evolved aliens to crash land onto Antarctica, the base here. But I just thought of something, guys, here. If the alien, if Blair is picking up pieces around to create a spaceship to Tony Stark and get out and go infect the rest of the world, then they obviously are the aliens that were traveling here.
No, they could have assimilated the pilot of that ship. Thus, they would have the knowledge of that alien and that species.
Yeah, but it's just...
They could have also made a motorcycle. That doesn't make them human.
Well, no, I mean, I think it could go either way. I mean, I don't think we can definitively say that this thing is whatever killed the UFO pilots. It could very well be. I mean, that could be their way of getting around. It just seems like... I mean, it's got to be a being. If you look at it from that perspective, it's got to be a being that can learn how to act like another species very, very quickly. So it's got to be hyper intelligent. In fact, it waits until perfect moments to kill. Right? It's not over. It doesn't come at you with brute force, although it can, and it shows that it can. It prefers to work covertly. So maybe this is a very tricky, very intelligent alien, and it just happened to have a malfunction with its ship.
But what does the alien ultimately want to do? Like, I just don't understand the motive. Like, at least with other sci-fi movies, with other aliens, you understand that their motive is clear.
Every species has the same drivers: survive and procreate. That's all we need to know. That's all the alien wanted to do. It wanted to survive this situation and find an opportunity to expand.
Then why at the end, if it knows that the only threat left is McReady, why would it try to be buddies with him? Why would it try and trick McReady? Why wouldn't it just like eat him right there?
Because you'd be caught mid-transformation. Then the rescue crew finds another mound of half human, half dog, half whatever. Instead of them finding two frozen human beings, who they then pick up, bring them back to the base for a burial, and the species has a chance the thing can break out again.
I think the bigger thing, though, is that this movie isn't about the alien. The alien is just a way to show us what people do, right? It's a trigger. It's not about it. So it could be all those facts are irrelevant in the sense that, you know, you can't say this movie makes sense or doesn't make sense based on the alien, because those questions don't have to be answered. What has to be answered is, how did it make people interact with each other? What was going on with the human beings? And so I think a great question is who was and who wasn't in the end, but I don't think it really matters what happens after that. I mean, the thing's going to destroy us all eventually, I think, is the message.
Yeah. Well, now's the time of the podcast where we break out the Shat meter and tell you how many wipes this movie would need to take off your butt. If you've never listened to the podcast, a one wipe is the equivalent of a Norwegian toilet. It's spectacular in its porcelain greatness. A 5-wipe movie is the equivalent of a metamorphosizing alien dog that sprays its goo all over your other dogs that are trapped in a
kennel of horror.
A kennel of horror is basically what 5 wipes is. With that being said, Big D, how many wipes would you give this movie?
It was not as scary as I remembered it as a 10-year-old, which is understandable. We had plenty of smart people doing dumb things, but on the whole, the execution was great, especially for 1982. The cast, even though we couldn't remember their names in a lot of cases, the characters themselves were memorable. The fact that they filmed this on location, great movie. Not perfect, but I think it's earned a 1.5 wipe from me. What about you guys?
Wow, 1.5 wipes. Gene, how many wipes would you give this?
This is some of the best horror I've seen. I love the psychological aspect of it. It's a fine example of Carpenter's best work. If somebody asked me what John Carpenter movie should I watch first, I'd probably say The Thing. I agree with Big D on the aforementioned issues with smart people doing stupid things and just some issues with the plot overall. But the characters were super likable. There's a pervasive mood that's really established, and Carpenter's very good at doing mood. I mean, you can feel what they're feeling. There are these dreadful silences or these big crashes, great use of sound, and shooting it on location. I mean, kudos to that. So for me, all those things considered, I'd go with one wipe.
All right. For me, the fact that I can't remember the characters' names. I didn't really understand the alien's motivation, what it was trying to accomplish, and there was that damn UFO, like, giving it away. Those are the problems that I had for that. I'm going to give it a little bit lower score than you guys have. I'm going to give this 2 wipes. I still do think that it's one of John Carpenter's best work, and I do believe it is a movie you should watch. I just didn't find it. I think there's better horror and sci-fi movies out there than that. So with our combined scores, Gene is just giving me that is a 1.5 white movie. Big D, where does this sit on the Shat scale of shatthemovies.com?
That sits it at number 8 in between Shawshank Redemption and Gremlins.
Oh, come on. This movie is not better than Gremlins.
Well, guess what? You had your vote, and that's what it is.
This movie is way better than Gremlins.
You guys are, you got to be joking my ass.
Yeah, I am joking your ass. But what's funny is Roger complains that we don't know this alien's motivation. He also complained about Rudy Daigle in Gremlins, who's in the movie for like 15 minutes, and he wanted more exposition on what her motivation was as a character.
Why are the Gremlins misbehaving, Raj? What's their motivation?
They're gremlins. They like to cause havoc. They're cute little puppets, lizard people that sing Frank Sinatra songs and flash people.
And forget that there's water and beer.
That's right. Well, now's the time where we give some shout outs. What are the shout outs, Gene, and how can people get one?
Shout outs, my friends, are our way of saying thank you for listening to the podcast. If you want to get one, you can go on shatthemovies.com. Scroll down, you'll see a little slide out that says get a shout out. Put your name in there, and we will read it on the podcast as a way of saying thanks. This week's shout-outs go to Mick from Brisbane. Is that home of Emily Browning? Probably not. Bill, Brendan M., Tony Smith, and Kim. Thank you all so much for listening to the podcast. We appreciate that. And please, everyone, go visit shatthemovies.com, check out some of our older podcasts, and tell us what you think of them.
Big D, what's the next movie? What's up? What can people go on shatthemovies.com and vote for?
Well, next week will be one of your favorite categories. It's John Hughes movies.
Oh, God, for the 4th time?
And the losers were 16 Candles, Vacation, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. And that means the winner with a whopping 52% was Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
This is actually really exciting for me because I'm going to Chicago in a bit for a Killer Queen tournament, and we will be doing a Ferris Bueller's Day Off day where all of us are going to go retrace the steps of Ferris Bueller, except instead of a Cubs game, we are going to a White Sox game because we are decent human beings.
Ugh. Why would you want... Why would you avoid the classicness that is Wrigley Field for the shittiness that is New Comiskey Park?
Because we don't want pieces of the fucking ballpark falling on our heads while we're walking by.
Ugh.
Or we also don't want to piss in cups.
Ugh. Terrible. Ferris Bueller's Day Off is fantastic. I've modeled my entire life around it, so 0 wipes.
I thought you said that was Fight Club. You modeled your life after.
Yeah, well, the Tyler Durden in me is Fight Club, and the narrator in me is Ferris Bueller.
Well, Abe Froman was my username on most accounts for like the 10 years after this movie came out.
The Sausage King of Chicago?
Yes, Abe Froman.
Well, that concludes this week's episode of Shat the Movies. Be sure to follow us on social media and share with a friend. We're everywhere, including Twitter, Snapchat, and Instagram at Shat the Movies. We're also on Facebook. Just search for Shat the Movies Podcast. Our website, where you can vote for all our movies weeks in advance, is shatthemovies.com. We're everywhere fine podcasts can be found, including iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, and YouTube. Be sure to subscribe, and if you stop by, please be sure to leave a 5-star review. That helps the podcast grow. You can also check out our sister podcast, Shat on TV, where we review television series such as Westworld, Taboo, and American Gods. We're also about to embark on Season 7 of Game of Thrones later this month, guys. I'm so excited. You can also find all the information there over at shatontv.com. On behalf of my co-hosts, Big D and Gene Lyons, I'm Roger Roper. Be sure to join us next week for our review of Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Thanks so much for listening. Take care, good night, and good luck.
Man is the warmest place to hide.
And the terrorists were overzealous, but it was sweet when they killed Ellis.